Well, hi everybody, and welcome to another one of our Perceptual Style Coaches Spotlight interviews. And today we have Connie Goals, and I've known Connie for years. Actually, that's pretty fun. I like that. And so let me first read her official bio, and then we'll get chatting. So Connie has dedicated her career to uplifting the Coachella Valley community, and it's sort of guided by her belief in leaving the world a little better than she found it. She's the founder and former CEO of Desert Best Friends Closet, and that's the region's only nonprofit providing free interview training and professional attire, where she impacted more than 8,000 individuals in over 14 years, and I think is an incredible accomplishment. Today, Connie Goals Consulting supports nonprofit leaders and organizations, bringing deep wisdom about leadership and culture and human differences. She's also a black belt in Shito-Ryu Karate Do and teaches karate to both neurodivergent and neurotypical students. And we're going to talk more about that. I think that's amazing. So, obviously, that work clearly reflects her patience, presence, and belief in human potential. So, Connie is one of our certified perceptual style coaches, and she's especially known for her powerful large group workshops that strengthen communication, collaboration, and organizational culture. All right, with a bio like that, we're going to have lots of stuff to talk about today. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for participating in this interview.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it, Linda Ross.
It's fun stuff. I love it. So the best thing we can do is get to the person behind the bio, right? So looking back on your career so far and your time in Coachella Valley, what feels the most meaningful to you right now?
So, right now, as I kind of like to when I get introduced, I say I'm a nonprofit consultant by day, martial arts instructor by night, and in the consulting, I work more than with nonprofits through perceptual style. I really, I think perceptual style is a game changer, a life changer for people because it really shows people, that they can embrace their strengths and to focus on what they're really doing well. And I think what I love about it is when you're working with the team, and I really do enjoy working with teams, when they learn about each other, it really improves communication and effectiveness in the workplace. And there's a little bit less snarkiness. Well, why is he always going out doing that? When they recognize, that activity person going out, and networking isn't just social, it is building clients, building relationships and things like that. So, people start understanding and valuing each other for their differences. And I think that's very important.
I love that. I love that you like it. So, well, since you brought it up, we'll talk more about your coaching and specifics first, later. But right now, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you first got introduced to perceptual style?
So I got first introduced to perceptual style through you when I was serving on the board of directors for the Alliance of Career Development Nonprofits. We call it ACDN. You were the chair, and we were at one of those board retreats there in Grapevine, Texas, and you had us all take the assessment, and you grouped us, the vision people together, the adjustments people together. And it just, you could see how it interplayed, and it was like, oh, it just explains so much about me.
Oh, God. I love
It's like, oh, that explains a lot of things. And it's funny, I'm vision, so, I'm good at the big picture things, not so good at the details, and I was having a conversation with one of my brothers, and I said something like, "I'm not good at details," and he just started laughing, and I'm like, "Oh, I wasn't aware that he was aware." So that was like, sometimes I'm just not always aware of how exposed I am, I guess is the word.
I guess.
So, yeah.
Well, it has a lot to say with, one of the things that people say sometimes is I'm one way at work and I'm one way at home. And I think one of the things we learn through perceptual style is you're just you, but you bring out there's a core of who you are on the strengths and how you show up that's going to be there no matter where you are. And then the reality is that you tap into different things in different environments, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Often, when we're talking about strengths, one of the things that I tell people is that if you don't have to take an assessment, just go ask 3 people that you trust, that you know well, what they think you do well, right? And you'll be surprised how much people
You know,
recognize,
I
realize.
I like that. I might use that. I suspect my kids would all have opinions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And but it's really interesting to see the commonality. This is off topic, but I think that's one of the reasons that those 360 approaches work
Mhm.
well in organizations, just to give you the insight.
Mhm.
There's consistency around what people see in who
Mhm.
you are, right? And so a lot of times it's the things that you do that you take for granted, that you don't recognize because you just assume everybody can do it.
Yes. And I think that's one of the big things is that one of my favorite things about perceptual style is that we learn to embrace our strengths. And I think as a culture, I mean, I don't know about outside the United States, but in America, United States, from the time you're in kindergarten, you'll get the parent teacher conference and like, this is what your child does well, but here's the things your child needs to improve on. And we're always focusing so much on what we need to improve on. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be better at whatever, but I think sometimes our culture really doesn't want to acknowledge or celebrate that which we do well. And I think it sends that message that what that which you do well isn't necessarily valued.
I think you're right. I really believe there's a lot of that, and I think that, um, it's easier to talk about what you need to improve sometimes, and the other thing I think that plays into that is we also, in our culture, to the most part, don't like people who brag.
Yes,
We judge on that.
women,
Women
and
who
I think
brag,
it is
right.
more gender specific. We're supposed to be humble. We're not supposed to brag. We're supposed to be a little meek. Not me.
Exactly, and sometimes that's been drilled in so much that just recognizing what you do well seems like a little braggadocious, and people will step back from it. Doesn't mean you have to go buy a neon sign and wear it. Like, I'm really good. Sure, you can live your strengths without broadcasting them, but you need to own them first, right?
Exactly.
I love it, I love it. So, how does being vision show up in your coaching?
So, the way that vision shows up in my coaching is that I am naturally rather optimistic. And I'm very much open to the possibilities, and I get very excited, like, "You could do this, this is," and I'm also aware that that openness and that optimism is very engaging for some people, but challenging to peoples of other styles. So I have to sometimes tone down a little bit my optimism, and because I see some people, it's a challenge for them. So it's important to me that the clients feel understood and respected, and in supportive ways that resonate with their own style.
I love that. So if I walked into one of your workshops, what would it feel like?
I think first it would feel fun. It's not heavy. And even though I'm vision, I know I have a lot of activity in me. So I often like to tell stories. I've had people question, are you sure you're not activity? I'm pretty sure I'm vision. It's pretty resonates with me. But I think when it's a large workshop, I like to group each style together and have them interact. And what's the best thing about being adjustments? What's the best thing about being methods? Because I want them to own it and to be proud of it, and recognize that we're really going to celebrate that which maybe they had to learn to downplay it a little bit. And
Yeah.
and I think that that's what's really important. I think they come away feeling really seen, maybe seen for the first time and valued for that which they do differently than, and I've learned to respect, not good at the details. And I've learned to respect those people who are really good at details and try to learn from them so I can do a little bit better job because I cannot not do details.
Right, right.
Secretly, I wish I could avoid that.
Not the truth. But it puts it in perspective when you know something's not a natural strength. You can still, like we say, acquire skills. You can get really, really good at them, but you pay a price.
Yeah.
And if you're not good at details, then you have to plan and you have
Yeah.
to set aside time for it, and
And
you
I
have to
have
be
I call it
focused.
recovery time afterwards too.
Oh, right. That's true.
I need recovery time.
Like that. I like recovery time. That's a really cool idea. And so, when we were talking about the workshops and stuff, so I know you like working with teams, but you also do individual coaching, and I think you have a specialty in that area too, don't you?
Yes, I am now a certified coach, so I can do the recognized strength profile. And I had a client this past summer, who was really looking at making a career change. And and I promised him that I can't tell you what job you should go for, but we looked at things that he should look at. And even though he really wanted a job where he was going to make more money, I said, and he was activity. And I said, if you have a job where you're just sitting behind a desk doing, filling out reports and doing worksheets and spreadsheets and things like that, is the money going to be worth it? Because you're going to be very miserable. And at what point, that's the trap of money sometimes. At what point
Right.
the cost's going to be really worth it? And he really had a lot of aha moments, and it really kind of taught him that he needed to look at things differently. And it turned out he ended up keeping his job, not making a career change, but setting up some boundaries within the job and getting like an assistant so that he wasn't so taxed. So he had the ability to be out on the floor, interacting and working with people and doing that and the trainings that he really loved, and a little bit less time behind on the spreadsheets and the computers. And so they really sort of almost accommodated him. And that really, it's worked out really well for him.
That is great. I think that's great. It's a play to your strengths story, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think, yeah, we all want to make more money, but at what price? And is it really worth it? And that's and he really hadn't considered that. And he really had to sit with that for a while.
Yes. Yeah. What's the thing that's gonna make me the happiest, and where can I show up every day and enjoy it?
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. So you have an incredible background in nonprofit organizations and starting Desert Best Friends Closet, etc. What drew you to coaching?
Because one, I enjoy trainings and doing workshops. At my heart, I am an educator. I'm a teacher. I love to teach and bring new ideas to people. And so being able to share this, which excites me very much, I really enjoy that. And it complements a lot with nonprofits, because nonprofits, as I like to remind people, is a cause that also has a business with it. And those, particularly founders, are people who are very passionate about the cause side of things. They're not so always good at the business side of things. And when you work with someone and you realize that they're also a vision, which is why I met with someone yesterday who has this great idea for this nonprofit, and she's actually starting it. There's no money yet, but it is a really good idea. But I said, don't forget it's a business. And so, I'm going to try and take her on as a client, because I want to see if she's more vision. Then she's going to have to set aside that time to focus on the details of running a business. If she's adjustments or methods, then she won't have to worry about that so much, but she might have trouble going out and networking in the community, which is really important when you're trying to grow something.
Right.
So it's like learning and then sort of guiding them, and just so they can still be them and focus on the nonprofit and help their mission succeed. But how can they achieve that successfully and effectively with still being who they are?
Exactly. One of the things I think is really powerful in situations like that, or that I've used over the years, is that it's also helpful when someone understands, because then they can target who they surround themselves with.
Mhm.
And all too often, when especially in startup organizations or nonprofits, people, the default is to surround themselves with mini me's. People
Yeah.
with passion, or they don't have to complete their sentences and everybody gets it. But unfortunately, that doesn't help an organization, the business side of an organization, survive.
You really need to have a complement of the different styles.
Exactly.
I did a workshop for a nonprofit for all the leadership in the organization. It was one of the very first workshops I did, and there were no goals. There was a lot of vision, a lot of activity, a couple adjustments, maybe one method. And it got real quiet in the room at one point, and someone said, and this nonprofit was struggling, really struggling. In fact, do think it has since closed. And someone said, we don't have anybody whose goals. And I think that's a problem.
I love it. You're fun when that awareness happens.
Yeah, and I didn't say that. I was thinking it, but I was great that they were able to come to that conclusion themselves, because it was great vision, great activity, but
Right.
but just short on a lot of other things, and that wasn't the only reason why they were struggling, but that had a lot to do with it.
Right, right. I think it's really about the talent and the skills you need to bring together, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
And
really.
whether you all wanna go out to dinner later is a totally should be, like, really, really secondary. So, I like that, I like that. So, what do you notice a shift in the room from the beginning to the end of a workshop when people have the information?
I just did a workshop yesterday, as a matter of fact, and it's very cute, very funny because the first thing he said is like, "Well, I get it, kind of, but I really want to know how does it work with everybody else?" And I said, "Oh, we're going to get into that because a lot of your other assessments that are out there, it's informative and it's helpful to know what you are, but I don't find that it translate to actual utilizing it and how it can impact and influence your interactions with different people." Well, then, so when you're doing it, when you get into, neighbors and opposites and one-offs, then they're like, their eyes are lighting up. And he goes, "Oh my God, that's why my wife and I always fight about this one thing because she's the opposite of this. And she it just drives me nuts and it just drives her nuts." And it's like, so, can you find a different way to approach it? And you start seeing the light bulbs. I always recommend to clients as we're going through a workshop. So think about, you know, your if you have adult children, what you think they might be. Think about your siblings, what you think they might be. Think about a past boss or supervisor, particularly one if you butted heads with. And then you start seeing the light bulbs going on, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's why I didn't get along with that person at work." They're gonna redo it, redo it, redo it, redraft it, and I just want it to get it done, and they just can't let it go, and it just drove me nuts.
Right.
That I find that those light bulbs going on around the room fascinating.
I do too, and I also like the fact that, one of the hard parts about perceptual style, I think, is recognizing limitations, because we all wanna be everything to everybody and do everything and, it'll be just delightful. And the reality is that we all have limitations, and so let's not focus on that. And I think it's fun when someone recognizes that something that they don't like to do, that they recognize they're not good at, and they don't really wanna be. There's someone sitting across the table that thinks it is the cat's meow. I mean, that's their favorite thing to do, and it's like you watch them physically go, "Ah, you like that? How lovely. Would you like to do more? Here, have mine."
When I was at Desert Best Friends Closet, so it was a startup and a nonprofit, and I'll have to admit, infrastructure wasn't really one of my focuses and certainly wasn't something that I even thought was that important. But when we hired a director, a manager of operations who adjustments was all about getting the processes in place. And it was, oh, well, it made a lot of sense. And it certainly streamlined and made the work better and easier
Right.
accountability. But I'll admit, it never would have occurred to me to do it.
I love it.
Never.
Yep. Well, I mean, it takes a community, obviously. I mean, if everybody had the same strengths, we would all be so boring. I mean, so much stuff that didn't get done. And we'd be spending all of our time competing with each other, right? So yeah, never mind. I don't really need to see that. So I was gonna ask you a little bit more about the karate. So I know that it is just part and parcel of who you are. So tell us how you got into that and how it shows up for you.
So I started training in karate about 11 years ago when I got divorced, and I'm a stereotype. I had never really lived alone, and my paths crossed with my sensei, who was a woman, who's the same age as my kids, and I thought, well, if she could do that, maybe I should try it. And when I started, I had no intention of staying with it. And typical vision person, I didn't ask a lot of questions. So the first class, I'm the only grown up in the class.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like looking around, and the parents are kind of giving me the stink eye. But I stood next to Jesse, who was 12, but and the same, probably taller than me. For 8 years where we trained together, and it's my second family. There were 8 of us that black belted together, and training gets very intense those last few months before you get your black belt test, and you just become family, and it is What I like about karate, it's good for the mind, it's good for the body, and my intention is to keep doing it until I'm physically or mentally no longer able to, which I hope is never. And then now I'm coaching, so I'm not competing anymore. I'm not training as much as I would like to, but I am really embracing being a coach and working with we have, some neurodivergent athletes. That's primarily who I work with, not exclusively. There's a large para division in karate. There's my sensei is part of Team USA para karate, and it is just so we have athletes who have physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities. We have a blind athlete. He's an adult. And, I forget that he's blind sometimes because I'll say, look down everybody look down at your feet. Oh, Isaac, sorry. I know you can't because I want to make sure your feet go in the right way. Um, and working with the students who have autism, you really see them start to shine. And last year, we brought about 17 athletes to the US Karate Open, which is an international tournament it was in Las Vegas last year. And seeing our athletes get up on the stage wearing a US flag as they get their medals, and their parents were just, there's tears. Everyone's crying because, they never thought their kid would get this. And it did.
Mhm.
And we also work with some sexual abuse survivors. There is a program here in the Coachella Valley, the Barbara Sinatra Children's Center, who works with children who have been traumatized or abused. And I've seen in real life girls who start off with their hair all in their face trying to hide because they're victims. And then they start pulling their hair back, standing up taller, and now they become warriors.
Oh,
And
what?
it's through karate do and learning that they can defend themselves. And then we also will get into things like anti-bullying, what to say and how to respond to a bully. And, we're not encouraging anyone to fight, but that you use their words. And it's very empowering. And there's just some of the kids that are just so sweet. And we have a tournament coming up next month that we're hosting. It will probably be the largest para karate tournament possibly in the country. And
Wow.
I'm very excited about that. And it just the kids, they beam and the parents beam because they thought their kids we've had kids who were nonverbal and now can verbal. They can yell "Kya."
Oh, man.
And so it works their mind and their bodies, and it's just really fun to see that transformation.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So, I think you have a motto, don't you, for
Yes, it's not necessarily original. It's I think it's partly from Winnie the Pooh, and there's a master teacher on Facebook who posts reels, and I actually got it from one of his reels. But I end the class with, and they're supposed to repeat after me, "I'm smarter than I think, stronger than I feel, braver than I seem. I can do hard things."
Oh, I love it.
And then I say, "We do hard things in here, and I know you do hard things out there." And I sometimes will add in, "Sadly, as you get older, the hard things just get harder, never go away." But they recognize that, there are some things that are really hard. And sometimes they will complain or whine about it. And I said, "Well, we do hard things in here. And do all your friends take karate?" "Well, no." I said, "Because some people don't want to do hard things. They only want to do the easy things." So,
I love it. You're very passionate about it, which is so cool. And how do you think it influences how you coach?
well, it's the same thing as that, you learn to meet people where they are. If a kid is nonverbal, I can work with him. Um, And the same thing when I'm doing a workshop for perceptual style or working with someone one-on-one, you meet them where they are. And that this can be hard, but we can do hard things. And to really embrace and changing that mindset, which for some people is really hard, particularly when
Right.
you have to do it this way or had a boss, you have to do it this way. Learning it hopefully frees them up and lets them feel that they can really be who they are and
Right.
forced to conform where it doesn't feel right. But
Exactly. And I think it's the other thing is that I find it easier for people to understand once they have an awareness of the different styles, the fact that am I arguing about what or how?
how? And that's where I was guys, we'll get along on the what, but we
Right.
each have a different approach on the how, and that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah, it doesn't
Okay.
have to be done exactly your way. I'm telling you, just understanding that has saved me a bazillion things in my personal life.
Yeah.
And it's, obviously, my husband and I are different styles, and so there's like I'll catch myself. Okay, this is a how moment. Just back off. However you want to get it done is good. Let's just get it done.
I like that. It's a how moment. Well, with my adult children, I've learned to say, that's interesting. Tell me more about that.
Oh, I love it. That's excellent.
Trying to stop the knee-jerk reaction, like, "Why are you doing it that?" "No, tell me more about that." So I think, because again, I imagine the possibilities, I wanna see the big picture, things don't have to be done my way. So that makes me more open to those things.
I like that. I like that. And I know you're doing a lot of work in leadership lately. So we were talking, I can't, a while back, I can't remember, but you were talking about why so much leadership literature doesn't really resonate with people.
Yeah,
Or,
too many of the leadership books from what I can see are written really from one perspective, and that's typically goals. Here's the objective, we're gonna get it done, we're gonna do it, and this is the deadline, da 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 da. And that doesn't really work for everybody. And so we have a group here in the Coachella Valley, leadership called Leadership Coachella Valley. It's a 10-month program that people commit to, and they really learn a lot about what's happening in the valley. They'll focus on education, they'll focus on healthcare, they'll focus on, agriculture because we're a very large, people aren't aware, but we're a very large agricultural community in our East Valley. And so I worked a lot with the board that everyone can lead, but they lead in a different way, and that, and their chair is a flow is here, and what her blind spots are and how they as a collective group can help her be a good leader. And I think that's when we recognize we have blind spots,
right.
ways of overcoming them. I think that's very empowering. And, everyone is not going to lead like General George Patton. That's your sort of classic goals leadership. And everyone, you can still lead if you're flow, if you're vision, if you're adjustments. You just lead in a different way. So it's the how that is different.
Exactly.
I
And
like about it.
and learning how to mitigate blind spots. I think that's really an important thing. I think that it's if you're going to lead, and you want to be the best leader possible, you need to lead with your strengths, but know where your blind spots are so that you can enlist lieutenants to help with that,
Exactly.
or other board members, but recognize it. Don't go fix it. Just recognize it and bring in someone for whom that is a talent
Yeah.
and use them as an advisor.
Well,
I think that's the key with leadership. It's
and I
meeting your
think
team where they are too.
there are some people think that a leader has to be the all-knowing, have every answer, have all the solutions, and to me, that's not the way I well, envision, that's not the way I
Right.
lead. I really wanna hear whatever other people have to say and like, "Oh, well, that's a great idea," "And how can we execute that?" And, of course, I'm not always gonna be great on the execution, I will not be good on the details, details, schmetails. But that's where, bringing people in different styles and how you guys can work together, it really becomes sort of this beautiful, magical thing.
I love it.
So,
It is pretty rewarding, I have to admit,
yeah,
being
it
able to
is it
watch
is
it when
it
that
is
happens.
fun. And I look back when I didn't know about perceptual style, I can see how why I didn't work well with people and frustrated with different people, and I wish everybody knew about this, and so we're trying to get this, get it out there, spread the word, because I think it will solve a lot of workplace and, home issues too.
True, it does, we have a line we use in our family, which is "Live the theory." I mean, and it's done tongue in cheek, but it's like you recognize that you're going at it in 2 different directions, so it's like, "Seriously, I would never do it that way," and the other person is like, "Well, I would never do it your way," and it's like, "Well, live the theory, have a lovely day. Let's find a way to meet in the middle and figure out what we got," right?
Yes. Okay.
That it happens, but it does really help. It really does help. So, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about you said meeting people where they are, and you talked about that being important. So give us a little bit about how you do that.
I've had situations where I'm working with a team and their boss decided they all should be taking the perceptual style, and they're clearly not happy about it because you can pick that up in the room that they're there because they have to be there, not because they want to be there. And they come in with the attitude that they think, one, they don't want to be there. Two, this is all mumbo jumbo pop psychology. But when I start kind of leading them through it, and I try to be gentle about it, and that, we all see things differently. And I give, there's some examples you give where, what do you see here? Do you see the young lady or the old lady? And, which, but it's true for you. Whatever you see is true for you. Well, then they start kind of the defenses start coming down a little bit and they start like, oh, they get curious about it. And then we start going through it and they're like, oh, well, and that makes, and then they what's the best style? I says, "No style is best, it's just you need whatever style is right for you, and that's who you are." Then some of those defenses come down and they become a little less resistant and they get very excited and then they start thinking, "I think my sister is this." And that explains things. So you start seeing when they start seeing how it's used, that isn't just learning and being labeled, it's how you can apply it practically, then they get really excited about it.
I love it. Yeah, I think it's the practical piece in it that really makes a difference.
I
And
agree.
and I also think I've often said it's an incredible tool for just self-awareness and personal development, etc. But the real power comes when you recognize the differences in other people and it changes the light that you put on that. It changes things from judgment to awareness. And and to quote Mel Robbins right now, it is the classic way of let them because it's like that's their way of doing it. Why
I like
prevent
that.
it?
Let them.
Let them be who they are. That's wonderful. But it takes away some of that prejudge because they're not like me. Because the reality is that we all want to believe that our way of seeing the world is the only and correct way of seeing the world, right? And so once you realize there are other ways and they're just as valid, it's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Takes the burden off of me for having to see it on behalf of everyone else. And you can start seeing differences as advantages for those other people. Yeah. I like it a lot. I know there were 2 things you wanted to make sure that we talked about today. I know one of them was about virtual training.
Yes, I am based in the Coachella Valley, which if you're somewhere else in the country, Coachella Valley is in, Southern California, eastern Riverside County. We're about 2 hours plus, depending on traffic from Los Angeles. But so, I'm not local to everybody, but we can do trainings virtually on the internet. They work really well, whether it's one-on-one or with groups, it works very well. And I find those, I mean, ideally I love in person, but virtual does work really well and it can be very successful.
I like it. I like it. And I think one of the things the pandemic did for us is people are embracing virtual more than they ever were
Yeah.
willing to prior to that. I
Yes,
mean,
I agree. Well, we all learned how to Zoom. So
yes, exactly, exactly. The other thing you wanted to talk about was affordability.
a lot of, programs like this or individual or group coaching, are, $5,000, $10,000. My prices aren't that high. I have special prices for nonprofits. It's more affordable than people think. And if someone approached me and they really wanted to work with me, but they're really on a tight budget, again, coming from the nonprofit sector, I talk about plan A, what we want to do, but plan B, what we can afford to do. So I am the queen of plan B. And if I was just telling one of my clients, and if you have something you want to do, but you can't fit, you can't afford it, let me know because I can probably come up with a way of figuring out how to do it on the cheap. I mean, I'm the gal I built dressing rooms out of PVC pipes. Now, I'll admit to an outsider, they probably looked awful, but I was so proud of those dressing rooms with the curtains that we hung. And I mean, I was so proud of them because I did it what I could afford to do. So,
Yes.
work with, people are afraid to ask. Contact me and work with me. I'll figure out how we can do it within your budget.
I love that. I think it's great. Well, and it's also part of who you are, of leaving things a little bit better than, and it's the drive to make a difference, to add value, to help people. Mm. So I really
About the money, I mean, money is important, but it isn't always about the money.
no, it isn't, especially in this line of work, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Well, and
mm,
nonprofits too. Yeah.
exactly. In nonprofits and in just helping people be more of who they can be. So if this is always a stumper, if you only had one thing that you wished every leader in the world knew, what would it be?
The one thing I think is that they don't always have to have the answers,
I love it.
and they should listen more than talk.
I like it. I like that a lot. I like it a lot. Well, Connie, I love having you as part of the Perceptual Style Coach family. You're incredibly active in all of our continuing education, which makes it more fun for us. I have to tell you that is really a bit from our standpoint. But I mostly it's because of how you show up in the world, and you're
Thank
truly an enjoyable person. I love your clarity and deep respect for individual differences. It shines through in what you do, from the karate to the coaching to your own nonprofit work. So anybody who wants to know more about Connie and how to get in touch with her, we'll have links to her website and her Substack included below. So you can reach out to her at any time. And Connie, thank you for being our spotlight person
thank
for
you.
the day.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Linda Ross.
I love it. Talk to you later.